Thank you everyone for joining us for another Learning Lunch hosted by FormatApproved.com. My name is Brian Johnson. I'm the Senior Director of Online Education with Format Approved, and I'll be your moderator today. Today's Learning Lunch will cover how to identify the right HIPAA consultant. We're joined today by Scott Patterson of Gibraltar IT. Scott is a seasoned IT security executive with years of real-world experience in a variety of different environments. He holds a host of security certifications that you can see described on your screen. Before we begin, remember that you can ask questions of our presenter at any time during today's session by entering them into the chat area. In the second half of our session, we'll address as many questions as time allows. If we do run out of time, answers to all submitted questions will be posted to our website and sent via email link later in the week. Also, note that all registered attendees of today's session will receive an email with links to both the slides and the recorded versions of this event. So we often have people ask us if they can get a copy of the slides after the presentation, and we'll be happy to send those along to you. Well, Scott, first of all, thank you for joining us today. It's a real pleasure to have you.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, let's dive right into it and start with the basics. How can an organization figure out who's the right HIPAA consultant?
Thank you. That's a good question. Information security has their big three: GRC, governance, risk, and compliance. Corporate America has their big three in terms of large corporations. It's FHE, financial services, healthcare, and e-commerce. Here's my big three: ECF, experience, certifications, and former executives. As an organization, you should want a former executive because they have the experience speaking with the C-suite, making decisions globally, adept in cultural reform, well-versed in implementing frameworks from zero, and also well-versed in making effective decisions in a collapsed budget. A consultant with a proven track record of success in the private and public sector will yield great dividends for the health of your organization. Certifications. I won't jump too deep into certifications, but I will give you my big three. Number one, ISC CISSP. The CISSP is a great certification. It's a unique blend of business and technology. In the past, the CISSP was only a business certification, and they realized that professionals were being deployed in the workplace and they didn't have a unique blend and an understanding of the technology and how technology wraps around the business, because technology is considered a business driver. So they went back, they restructured the study material, they restructured the exam, and now the CISSP has a unique blend of business and technology. Number two, Cisco's CCIE in security. In the beginning, Cisco's CCIE was all technical certification. They basically followed the same path as ISC. So they went back and added more business into their certification path, and now the Cisco's CCIE has a unique blend of business and technology. My last certification, I would say, would be ISACA's CISA, CISM. CISA is a certified information security auditor, and CISM is a certified information security manager. These are very good journeyman certifications. Do not allow a consultant to enter your organization without at least the CISA or the CISM. Let me end this question with a quick example.
Please do.
If you go to a doctor and the doctor recommends surgery, what are some questions you would ask your doctor before you have the doctor perform surgery? You would ask him, how long has he been a doctor? Does he have active certification? And the last question you would ask the doctor is, how many times have you successfully performed this surgery? Do not allow a consultant to make surgical recommendations in your organization without having my big three, which is ECF, experience, certification, former executive.
So you've talked a little bit about those certifications and some of the experience that's important, but what knowledge should the consultant have about compliance?
Your consultant should have your consultant should have non-consultant experience in leading global initiatives for compliance. The reason why I say non-consultant experience is because a consultant can only give you a consultant's perspective based on the number of clients they have engaged. They do not have a track record of implementing compliance at the highest level in the public and private sectors. They haven't dealt with collapsed budgets, board and C-suite communication and culture changes. You want your consultant to have visceral feelings when it relates to objectives and risk. And the only way to experience that emotion is through experience. As an organization, you should aspire to engage with a consultant with this level of experience because it would only yield great success. Two other things are compliance and frameworks. Before I jump in really deep in terms of what compliances are out there or what frameworks are out there, let me give you a definition of what a framework is. Simple definition. A framework is a guideline on how to achieve an objective. So you want your consultant to have framework experience in implementing multiple frameworks from zero. Let's go over what some frameworks are out there. You have NIST, which is a framework. You have COBIT, which is a framework. You have ISO, which is a framework, PCS, ISA. There's so many different frameworks out there, but your consultant should pick the right framework that matches your business model. Compliance. Compliance measures you on those objectives. So frameworks are guidelines on how to achieve an objective. Compliance measures you on those objectives. And there are multiple compliances out there. HIPAA, PCI, SOC, GLBA. So you want to ensure that your organization is following the right compliance path. Because for organizations of dual compliances, for instance, if you're a healthcare organization and then now you go to bill the patient, you have now moved into dual compliance. You have to follow HIPAA compliance and you have to follow PCI compliance as well. So a consultant, a non-consultant, very, very, very deep experience into frameworks and deep experience into compliance will yield great results for you and your organization.
So it sounds like the consultant needs that blend of the proper certifications and that depth of real-world experience.
Absolutely, it's paramount.
And you mentioned this is something that's come up
You
already.
want to with a track record for success.
Yeah, and it goes to the next question. You mentioned in the certification discussion that you know there's a blend of business and technology. Why is it important for the consultant to have knowledge in both of those areas?
Wow, that's a really good question. In the past, business and technology were considered the antithesis of each other. Nowadays, we have evolved. Let me give you a perfect example. Every organization has a business objective, and every organization has an operational objective, which is how they go about achieving a business model. On top of that, every organization has technology. And these days, we have evolved yet again because technology is integrated into the operational objective because technology is considered a business driver. And on top of the technology, you have security. So you want a consultant who has this 5,000-foot view of how everything works, how the security secures the technology, which is integrated with the operational objective, which achieves the business model. Let me give you another example. Business communication. You want a consultant who has experience speaking with the C-suite and speaking their language because they are uninterested in how another piece of technology will bring over your single sign-on solution over the top. They are myopically focused on a few things, which is process, business, operations, and money. So when you speak with the C-suite, speak to the matters, speak to the things that they are interested in. Let me give you an example. Mr. CEO, here are the risks that are on the books that could jeopardize the operations. If the operations is jeopardized, it will impact the business, which impacts revenue. Based on the risks, If we do not mitigate these risks, here's how much we stand to lose in 1 minute, 1 hour, 1 day, 1 week, and if this goes into a month, we're dead. The CEO will return your call. He will gain a great deal of respect for you, and more importantly, you will get your project funded. And lastly, technology. You want your consultant to have technology experience, right? Not book knowledge, but technology experience, because they're able to speak with the technology folks. Because oftentimes the technology guys are myopically focused on their objectives. And sometimes they need a 5,000-foot view to explain to them how everything forms and produces a product for the customer, which generates revenue and money. So a consultant, those three will yield great results for you and your organization.
So what are some other areas that providers need to look at in selecting a HIPAA consultant?
That's a good question. In selecting a consultant, it should offer multiple compliances. Again, experienced consultants. Back to question one. Let me give you an example about multiple compliances that they should support. Let's take HIPAA and PCI for example. An organization who's myopically focused on patients, and let's just say that they handle the patient data 100%. They handle the patient data very well and it's secured. But what happens when that organization goes and bills a patient? They have now left HIPAA compliance and moved into PCI compliance. But what if they only engaged with a consultant with only HIPAA experience? They would have entered into another compliancy and not even known, A, and B, have huge risk on the book in terms of securing financial transactions and not even know it. So it's very, very, very crucial for any organization to vet out their consultant and vet out the consultant agency in supporting multiple compliances. And obviously, going back to my number one, my answer to question one, my big three as well, ECF, experience, certification, former executive.
Scott, if I could just jump in for a second, I want to add, I think a lot of, in our conversations with medical practices, I think a lot of folks out there may not even be aware of what PCI DSS is. So, for people who may not know, those are the regulations that the payment card industry has around credit card security. And it does speak, I think, to the fact that you want your consultant to understand the whole compliance environment. HIPAA is one thing, but PCI DSS goes hand in hand with it.
Absolutely. Apples and oranges. And if you have a consultant that understands the nucleus of a business, the core business objective, and they can attach the core business objective to a compliancy, that's great. You have healthcare, and you have HIPAA compliancy. But once the organization pivots and makes a slight adjustment in a matter of seconds into another compliancy, now they have dual compliancy. And if your consultant is only versed in HIPAA, you're in big trouble.
So along those lines, what's the deal with Sarbanes-Oxley? What do people need to be? Why is that experience important?
SOX is good. Sarbanes-Oxley for large organizations securing the financial data. Because the number one thing, to put it simply, Sarbanes-Oxley prevents the books from being cooked. So it's mainly targeted for larger organizations. But here's the thing. For smaller organizations, they ask me all the time, Scott, I'm not public. The SOX still applies to me. Can I still go out and achieve the SOX compliance? And the answer to that is yes. You should want to secure your financial transactions and secure your financial reporting 100% of the time, even though if you are not measured on it in terms of a formal compliance, you should want to have your financial controls secured as if you were a Fortune 5, Fortune 1000 organization.
So what services should providers look for from their consultant then?
That's another good question. Multiple services, risk assessment, and here's the thing that I've added called active remediation. I just want to talk about this for a few seconds, in that risk assessments, everyone knows the risk assessment, right? I mean, that was the first thing that HIPAA wanted you to do, go out and perform a risk assessment. But what happens when the organization comes to what happens when a consultant agency comes to your organization and performs a risk assessment? And let's say it takes them a month or 2 months to perform a solid risk assessment and yield you back a report. What takes place during those 2 months? Active risks are being scribed. However, as each week passes, that risk is not being addressed. That weakness, that vulnerability is remaining on your books for weeks and weeks and weeks. And guess what? Every week, that vulnerability rating gets higher and higher. You want to engage with a consultant and a consultant agency who supports risk assessment with active remediation. That is, if a consultant is at your organization and they realize that a threat, that a vulnerability is high, extreme, they'll instantly stop what they're doing, get the right parties in the conference room, and get the risk remediated quickly. Because remember, I'm actually thinking about changing the name of the risk report to health report, because it tells you what the health is of your organization. And if your organization is healthy, then great, you'll live on and continue to make lots of cash. But if the organization is not healthy, and you allow the risk to remain on the books and do not perform active remediation, a healthy organization will go to zero. Security awareness training. Security awareness training is the key, because you have to factor in the human network. You have to factor in the human side of things. What happens if a human is unaware of something that they should not be doing? They're going to do it. And then what happens, what's the result of that? The result of that could be the downfall of your business. The result of that could be patient healthcare information leaks. The ramifications are huge. Security awareness is paramount in every organization for their livelihood. Ongoing security awareness training, and if the consultant agency does not support security awareness training, they either need to partner with an organization that supports security awareness training, accredited organization that also can educate and make your employees aware. And it's not only just employees, it's also technology employees as well, because don't make the assumption that every technology person understands what they should and should not be doing. Recurring services. Here's another big one. Every consultant agency should provide recurring services. What does that mean? That means when an organization comes in and performs a risk assessment, make sure that they do more than just assess the risk, that they can actually assess the risk, classify the risk for you, and associate a dollar value with it, lay down the compliance path, and then lay down a framework to achieve that compliance. If they only provide risk assessments, then that means that your information will be at one organization, and then it will have to be passed to another organization that can remediate the risk. You want that health report, that's our new name for it as opposed to risk report, you want that health report in the hands of as least people possible. So make sure that your organization does everything. Risk assessment, active remediation, frameworks, compliance, multiple compliances, multiple frameworks, etc. That way you know when you engage with a consultant and when you engage with a consulting agency that you're with those guys forever. It's a marriage.
Well, that makes a lot of sense, and I love the idea of active remediation because there must be cases where organizations, while they're sitting around waiting for their report, there's active data breaches going on day by day, minute by minute, and so it makes a lot of sense then to have somebody who can immediately step in and say, well, this is a dire threat that we need to address now.
Absolutely. Every day your risk posture changes for an organization. That risk assessment has a shelf life. And guess what? It's a day. If I hand you the risk assessment today and sign off on it, that means tomorrow your risk posture changes. So the goal is to use that risk assessment as a catapult to remediation. It's frameworks and having a framework to lead to compliance in that order.
Yeah, I think sometimes people forget about that part of it in a way that the purpose of the report isn't just to put on a shelf, it's actually to fix any problems that you identify. Well, we're talking about the risk analysis or the health report as you were calling it. What documentation should people expect after their assessment?
So remember, the risk assessment is a high-level report. Before I go there, let's just talk about some things that should be on the risk assessment, right?
Okay.
Or in the health report, rather. So the health report should yield the risk, the description of the risk factorization, what's the likelihood of this risk taking place, what's the impact to the organization, is the impact a 0, is it a 1, is it a 5? If it's a 5, definitely we need to address those now. Identify what the control is. Is there an existing control in place that's causing this risk, or is there no control in place? What's a proposed mitigation path? Who owns the risk? This is the key, because no one wants to own a risk in their department. Everyone is pointing fingers at other departments. No, this isn't mine, this is his, this isn't mine, this is his. Who owns the risk? And after the proposed solution is mitigated, will this eliminate the risk? Will it decrease the risk? Because a risk will never be eliminated. It's always decreased because there's always some likelihood that it could take place.
What about the inputs and outputs?
And again, yes, thank you. Good question. The inputs and outputs. Again, your risk assessment is the input, and the outputs are risk remediation, immediately risk remediation. And I have to say this again, and I'm happy that this is a question because your risk report has a shelf life. That's it. If your risk report is submitted to your organization today, it is due the following day, and the day after, and the day after. And if your organization that you are dealing with does not get this, and they provide you a risk report and you never hear from them again, that's bad. Hopefully, you're taking notes, and you will engage with proper consultants who will explain the same message to you, and that the risk assessment is the beginning. The path is far greater than just a risk assessment.
So what are some things that providers need to understand about information security?
Excuse me. Thank you. Good question. A lot. There's so much information out there, right? There's PCI, PHI, PII, intellectual property, BII. Let's go through each of these very briefly so you understand what type of information you have in your organization. We know PCI, payment card industry, securing payments, financial processing, etc. What's PII? Personal identifiable information. If I'm a healthcare organization and I'm myopically focused on PHI and I'm securing that well, what's PII? How does that relate to me as a healthcare organization? Well, it does, because imagine this. PII supports your operational objectives. PHI supports your business objectives. And how do you go about achieving operational success? By hiring folks. Now, when you hire someone, what information do you request from this person? First name, last name, you run a background check, social security number, personal identifiable information. So every organization, doesn't matter what their core business is, whether their core business revolves around PHI, PCI, has some PII. Every organization houses PII. What's PHI? Patient healthcare information. That's exactly it, everything that we've been discussing. Patient healthcare information. The unauthorized disclosure of PHI. I won't beat that too much. I think we understand what PHI is. BII, business identifiable information. As an organization, do I have business identifiable information? I don't think I do. Let's see. Not every organization. Most organizations have business relationships with other organizations. That's a business-to-business relationship. And what information do you have on the other business? You have the business name. You have their tax ID number. Is there some sort of online payment taking place that you have their business name along with their tax ID number along with their routing and check-in number? That's business identifiable information. Do you have, do you mind if everyone in the internet views your contract between the two businesses? If the answer is no, then you house business identifiable information. Intellectual property. This is always fun to me. I always try to give this example. It's let's call it 2014, and no one, yet, to date, has figured out what Kentucky Fried Chicken special herbs and blend secrets. To date, no one knows. That's because they have IP protection, intellectual property protection. Every organization must have some intellectual property. You must do something different that you don't want anyone else to know about. Because if they do, that does not make your organization special. Thank you.
So with healthcare regulated by the government the way it is, what should providers expect in terms of audits? What's the environment look like out there?
The environment is ugly out there. Ugly times ugly. Healthcare they will suffer many audits. It's fortunate to say because they house so much patient health information. But yes, they will. Imagine this: healthcare. Let's look at this in terms of a chart. And we have two industries. We have healthcare and we have financial services. Right now in the chart, financial services is about an 8 in terms of regulation. Healthcare is about a 1.5, maybe 2 if I'm generous to them. That's it. They need to catch up to financial services. And how will they catch up? By scaring folks, by massive findings and having those findings equate to dollars for every organization who is not HIPAA compliant. That's really all I can say about that. It's a good thing. I don't want organizations thinking of compliance as a bad thing. It's a good thing. Compliance ensures that you're doing the things properly in order for you to, A, maintain your customer base, and B, ensure that your customers don't have to reintroduce themselves to the world in 6 months or 12 months in the event that their information is compromised. VAAs, ensure your business associate agreements are signed. There's another one. Be aware where your PHI resides. That is throughout your organization. Be aware what comes in, the inputs and the outputs. What comes in, where does it go when it comes in? Every department should have a data flow chart in terms of what they do, how it surrounds the patient health information, and how they hand off to another department. Because every department does some piece of work, and then they hand it to another department and another department, all the way out to billing, all the way to the patient is closed out. Know where your data resides. Know where you jump into one compliancy, jump from one compliance into the next. Knowledge of your business is key. And if you don't know your data, you don't know your business.
Well, and I have to believe that with so many people moving toward, say, cloud-based EHRs and that sort of thing, I strongly suspect there's practices out there that if you ask them, where does your PHI reside, they probably have no idea. And so how can you be HIPAA compliant if you don't know where the protected health information is?
Absolutely, I agree. That's a great question. I mean, that's the quagmire that they're calling. This field, this industry, was never regulated the way that it is now. So imagine the education that must take place internally for folks while they're still trying to maintain profitability. You know, so you're still trying to maintain profitability. You're still trying to maintain your current client base, and you're learning a new regulation. It's tough. This is why picking and choosing the correct consultant and the correct consultant agency is paramount. I want to end this question on one other thing. It's like motivation for everyone out there listening. And what motivates folks? Revenue. Increase revenue, increase sales. It motivates everyone, right? So if I can tell you a way to increase your revenue and increase your sales, you will listen. All right, here we go. Compliance increases sales. Let me give you an example. Let's say company A is following PHI, following HIPAA. They have it down cold in terms of securing the patient health information. Then you have, and they're compliant, and they're following, and they were issued some ISO compliances, et cetera. So they have documentation to A, give to the sales folks, to B, promote on their website, and to C, obviously, present that during the value proposition stages, right? And then you have company B, who is not compliant, who does not have certification, and who pretty much isn't sure where their patient data lies. You, as being a third party, who would you engage with? Would you, A, engage with the company who has the proper credentials, who is yielding compliance documentation? Or would you, B, deal with the company X who doesn't have any documentation, who is not following any compliance, even can't produce any sort of paperwork or certification? I don't know about you guys, but I think I'd pick company A.
And do you see more of that happening now where practices and even business associates are becoming stricter about who they'll work with around HIPAA?
You know, that's another good question. I don't think that that's taking place now. Hopefully folks will learn from today's webinar, but I haven't seen it yet from the smaller practices. I think the smaller practices are trying to remain under the radar and hoping that someone doesn't knock on their door with a suit.
Right.
I don't think that's the best way to go, but I think the larger organizations are trying to get their head around it. But remember, you know, trying to get your head around it is tough. This is why, you know, I think you should consult, because you have, when an organization who is newly in the regulated space is going to have to deploy tons of cash into creating a new department that didn't exist a few months ago. So now you're looking at $500,000 in salaries on the low end for information security department, and then re-educating everyone, the business, the technology, and so forth. It's a lot, you know. So hopefully folks pay attention and they listen to this, because I think next year is really going to wake a lot of folks up. I think, and we also should have taken advantage of the government shutdown. Keep in mind, 923 HIPAA compliance, highly regulated, and the government shutdown. They basically gave everyone 3 to 4 weeks off in order to shore up their security, get the risk assessments in, perform active remediation, classify the risk in court, move to a framework, and have that framework lead to compliance. They gave them 3 to 4 weeks on. So we'll see. That's a good question. Thank you.
So what are some tips and tricks you can share with providers? Some basic things.
Tips and tricks. Okay. Secure wipes of copiers. This is key. I most recently performed an active remediation in that I've seen. Let me rephrase. I've seen an organization have patient health information on their copier, stores to their hard drive, and then they take that copier and send it back to the copier manufacturer. Copier manufacturer says, yeah, sure, we wipe. We'll securely wipe this. No receipt. And even if they are securely wiping it, they're only doing it once. The industry standard is 7 passes. So what's a tip and trick? Contact your copier vendor. Ensure that they are securely wiping the hard drives. 7 passes is the industry standard. And have them provide you a receipt that you now file internally in your organization with the serial number of the merchandise that you have returned. What's another one? Lock your PC. That's easy, right? So many folks say, wow, why do I need to lock my PC? I'm only going to come right back to it. But what happens if you have patient health information that's up? What happens if you're billing and you have this patient credit card information up? Keep in mind this. I was going to say this afterwards, but I'll say it now because I think it's a great segue into this. Every customer that walks into your establishment that accepts services you provide is entrusting you with their information, trusting you in that they won't have to reintroduce themselves to the world in 6 months to a year if they suffer a breach. So keep that in mind. Lock your PC. Become a habit of it. Security should not be only instituted inside an organization. You want to institute security in your life. It's a lifestyle change is what it is. It's not technology. It's not business. It's right in the middle. And it's also a lifestyle change. What's another one? Conduct internal security, internal audit. You must do this as an organization. Let me give you an example. So right now, everyone is hopefully running steadfast in order to become HIPAA compliant. So let's say you are HIPAA compliant, and you achieve some sort of ISO certification as well for a general overall company's security. What happens next year? It's so easy to achieve compliance. I'm not saying easy, but it's easier to achieve compliance because it's on the CEO's radar. It's on the COO's radar. Everyone knows you need to become compliant. But what happens when you become compliant? Is it on everyone's radar at that point? Are there 400 or 500 meetings a week that everyone's discussing HIPAA compliance? No, not at all, because they feel that they have won. They feel that they have succeeded. And you haven't really succeeded because recompliance is worse. And again, another tip and trick, again, awareness training. You have to, the human side of things is huge. If there's a risk that's ever written down on the books that never decreases, this is the one. Every employee in the world will forget what they learned today. So security awareness and constant refreshing internally on your staff is paramount to the success of your business. And also, you want to measure the effectiveness of your training program. This is why I say that you need to partner with, you need to engage, with the right consultant and the right consultant agency. And then they, in turn, need to engage with guys who perform these types of security metrics, security awareness metrics throughout. So you know the effectiveness of the program at any given time, and you know it works in the organization. And lastly, I just wanted to reiterate this again. It's easy to become compliant. It's difficult to maintain. Work on maintaining forever, because we've learned today that compliance yields revenue. You can use this as a revenue driver, as a business driver for your organization. Tool your sales force up with all the certifications possible. That's it. Thank you.
Well, I think the example of the copiers, I'd like to return to that for a moment. I think that's a good example of really why you need a consultant or you need a security professional to help you, because I don't think most people have thought in the past about the fact that copiers in a medical office are just packed full of PHI, because they don't think of the fact that there's a hard drive in there. Now, there was this breach last year, I guess it was, where an insurer or it was a health plan got in quite a bit of trouble around their copiers, so maybe people are a little more aware than they used to be, but still, that's the sort of thing that I think is so easy for people to miss, and you can get into real trouble if you don't take care of that data properly.
Absolutely, it's paramount. A doctor is myopically focused on patients. They go to school, they have the certifications, and they are the best in servicing patients. They aren't the best in information security. Their degree and their certifications are geared towards patients. Let the professionals handle the things that they are professionals in. Information security professionals, chief security officers, are not trying to become doctors, and doctors should not try to become chief security officers.
That makes a lot of sense, and I have a feeling that part of the issue here is I think a lot of medical professionals just don't want to think about HIPAA security and the information that they're supposed to protect, but obviously it needs to move up on their priority list for some of them as we have more and more breaches of this data. So we,
the funny thing about it is it'll either move up on their priority list voluntarily, or it will move up on their priority list through force.
That's right. So, I was looking at the HIPAA's or HHS Wall of Shame today because that's what I do for fun, and there's more than 700 organizations on there now that have had major breaches of data. So, if you don't take care of this stuff, you're definitely at risk. Well, let's get to questions from our audience here.
Imagine the
Oh, go ahead, Scott.
Oh, I just wanted to point out. Yeah, imagine the new patient who's searching for a new practice to join. Is he going to join that practice that's on the Wall of Shame, or is he going to join the practice who is not listed?
Right, and if when they Google you, the first thing that pops up, you being the medical practice, is that you've had this breach, I think that is, of course, the worst kind of publicity that you could ever have.
Absolutely.
And I'm sure that is why they maintain the Wall of Shame. So let's get to some questions from our audience. Got some good ones in. If you have questions that you'd like to ask of our expert, this is a great opportunity to kind of get a question in with a HIPAA consultant with a lot of expertise. So the first question is, why do you think 2014 is going to be a wake-up call?
Because I don't think 2013 was a wake-up call for healthcare organizations. Now, I'm not speaking healthcare organizations only in New Jersey. This is a 5,000-foot view. This is a holistic view and a holistic statement in that I don't think that everyone is taking this serious. I think they're piecemealing information together and handling things that they think that need to handle first. But implementing an information security framework in your organization that does not have one, I don't think you should go about piecemealing that information in and piecemealing objectives into your organization. So I think that 2014 will be the wake up year, because again, it's still the genesis of being regulated in this field.
Now, I know that the OCR and HHS is about to launch a new audit program if they haven't already, so there's definitely going to be more activity on that front. Were you surprised that 2013 didn't have more of a kind of uptick in awareness, at least? The omnibus final rule came out, and a lot of people scrambled to get ready. But then other people, it seems like, just kind of kept their heads down and decided to hope for the best.
Yeah, let me put it. I do think that a lot of folks put their head down and actually hope for the best because keep in mind, I'm definitely not making excuses for anyone. However, I do understand is that it's tough to run your business and also deal with a new regulatory compliance. So I think that there's still myopic focus on running their business, billing, trying to increase sales, trying to keep everything going smoothly as it has been, as it hopefully has been, while at the same time doing HIPAA regulations on the side. That's a problem.
All right, well, let's ask another question from our audience. This question is, what do you typically find in a risk analysis, or is it hard to make general statements?
It's tough to make general statements because each organization is different, so it's tough. So in answer to your question, I think the question is, out of 3 healthcare organizations, what finding would you find in all 3? Is that safe? Is that a safe translation?
Yeah, that's a good way of answering it, I think.
Okay. I go back to copiers. That's a finding that can be not deleted. I go back. I can say laptops, unencrypted laptops.
I'm glad you mentioned that one because it seems like if you look at the breaches, it seems like every other one is caused by some kind of mobile device that wasn't encrypted. It just seems like that's such a basic security element that people are not getting right. What's your experience with that?
Basic to whom?
Right.
Basic to someone who is well versed in regulatory, or basic to someone who has never ever had to deal with security in the organization. I want to say this. Oftentimes, small to medium-sized practices is like a family. So they feel that if they secure their environment, their family won't trust them anymore. If everyone's still on the call, listen to this. It doesn't have anything to do with the mistrust of your employees. It has to do with doing what you're supposed to do to ensure the unauthorized disclosure of patient health information. It has nothing to do with the family. It's all about the data, guys. And if you don't know your data, you don't know your business.
Yeah, when I said basic, I guess I just meant that it's something that people could fix, if they would just pay attention to it, and it would prevent so many problems, but people seem to be missing that one quite a bit.
Absolutely. I think they are missing it. But let's take it a step further. Let's say if you go and you try to encrypt your laptop and you don't have the software, how does a doctor know how to vet an encryption software for the company? Right? So that's why they have to engage with a consultant who understands these types of things and has great relationships rather, with third parties that can decrease their costs. Because that's the number one question that everyone's been trying to figure out. Doesn't matter what industry you're in. How do I increase efficiency and decrease costs?
Right. So here's a question for you. Are most breaches caused by technology problems or by human error?
That's a good question. If I had to place a percentage, I would say 60-40. 60% human, 40% technology-based.
Tell us a little more about that. So what are the human errors that are causing the problems here?
When I say human, I'm factoring in employees, and I'm also factoring in lack of training in IT staff as well. So I'm not just saying lack of awareness on the employee side. So 60% human. There aren't a lot of good consultants. There aren't a lot of good technology folks out there. This is why I say, let's go back to question one. My big three, ECF, experience, certification, former executive, because that way you know that they have a track record of success, and you don't have to worry about, you know, some of the human issues because they're taking care of that. They have a great partnership with security awareness training, so they can train technology and train the regular employee folks. The 40% technology, I would say, is 40% because sometimes organizations have solutions on top of problems. They never resolve the problem. They just throw another solution that sounds like it resolves the problem. And that's huge out there. Not every technology should be deployed. And also, the flip side to that coin is not having the technology deployed in the first place.
So do you see a lot of problems with people having like sort of networks patched together? And I'm just without getting too technical, I'm just curious about the sort of things that you've seen on that technical
I'm sorry,
side.
I couldn't hear the beginning part of the question.
Sorry, yeah, I was just saying when it comes to technical problems, have you seen just like, you know, kind of patched together networks? And without getting too much into the details, I was just curious about some of the things that you've seen.
Oh, absolutely. I've seen patched together networks. I've seen organizations deploy the wrong resources. Let me give you an example. The encryption standard for now and hopefully forever is AES 256, which is Advanced Encryption Standard 256. However, I've seen the wrong technology deployed, and there's still an encryption standard called triple DES. That is old. What's another example that I can say? Not proper networking gear that's out there. VPN software. No one has factor authentication. Folks think that if they put their password in twice, that's two-factor. No, it's two-step. Two-factor is a password in some other factor, biometric, smart card, etc. So, yes, absolutely. I think the technology that's deployed is, lack of better terms, sloppy. I think it needs to be cleaned up. And technology is meant to be light, not heavy, without getting too deep.
One thing we've been hearing a lot more of lately is that a lot of organizations, although it seems hard to believe to me, I guess, a lot of organizations still have XP machines, and that's not going to be supported past April. So I think that's got to be one that's going to surprise a lot of people that, you know, if they're using those machines, they've got to do something about them here in the very near future.
Absolutely, and the very near future, I would say today,
Yeah.
As soon as the conference ends, because you have to pick a new platform. Are you going to go to Windows 7? Are you going to go to Windows 8? What's the cost associated with that? Am I going to have to purchase new hardware? It's a lot of different things factoring in, and also keep in mind this is the fourth quarter. Organizations are trying to conserve cash at this point, not deploy cash out to other initiatives. So I certainly hope everyone is in the process or engaging with the correct consultant and correct consultant agency to remediate that high risk. As a matter of fact, I wouldn't call that risk high. I would call it extreme.
Well, we're nearly out of time, but this is something I think your entire presentation has addressed, but maybe just a few words before we conclude on what would you say to practices who, you know, want to do all this work themselves? Why do they need a consultant? And I think you've said a lot that should clue people in on that, but maybe just a few words more on why that's important.
Again, consultants are not trying to become doctors. Doctors should not try to become consultants. You are not versed in compliance in this space. It would take an entire re-engineering of your education program. You're myopically focused on patients. Hire the correct consultants to be myopically focused, on information security for your organization. Do not attempt to do this by yourself. I did need a small practice, and the individual is attempting to do this by themselves, and it's not good. It's only going to lead to failure. It's only going to add more vulnerabilities on your health report. And remember, the longer vulnerabilities stay on your health report, the probability is high that your business will die.
And if you have a breach, then the government's going to be right behind to look at your entire compliance efforts. And the ONC recommends that people should have a third party do their risk analysis, that it's not good to do it yourself.
Absolutely, absolutely. The last thing you want is Uncle Sam coming through, kicking the tires, everything in your business.
Because they're going to find a wobbly tire. If you did it yourself, they're going to find that tire.
Absolutely. Their job isn't to come in and find one thing. Their job is to come in and find multiple things, because each finding equates to dollars.
And the OCR gets to keep that fine money as well, if I understand it correctly.
Absolutely. You know, they're going to decrease the deficit and upgrade everyone's cars that they're chauffeured in to Escalade,
and you're going to pay for it. Right.
And we're going to pay for it. Absolutely.
Well, Scott, I want to thank you for joining us for today's Learning Lunch. I think you've had a lot of great counsel for people. So thank you.
Thank you so much. This was an extreme pleasure, and I enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
To learn more about Gibraltar IT and HIPAA consulting, security consulting, please visit www.gibraltarit.com. You can see the URL there on your screen. They'd be happy to talk to you about your security needs. I'd also like to thank all of our attendees today. Remember that all registered attendees of this session will receive an email with links to both the slides and the recorded versions of this session. Format Approved offers convenient, robust online education on HIPAA rules and regulations if you need that training piece Scott was talking about. Our higher level security course includes updated business associate agreement templates to get those updated for the Omnibus Final Rule. Visit www.formatapproved.com/education/courses_security, or the first URL on your screen there if that's too much of a mouthful, to learn more about our HIPAA training. If you need a risk analysis or HIPAA documentation, we can also help you out with that with the second URL there on your screen. Visit formatapproved.com to learn more about our upcoming Learning Lunches. The Learning Lunch button will take you to the registration page for our upcoming sessions. Our next Learning Lunch will air on December 10th, and we'll cover the subject of maintaining HIPAA compliance through email security, archiving, and encryption. Keep an eye on your email box on our homepage for other upcoming topics, and thank you again for joining us today.